is Public Affairs Analyst Akini Kunu. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you
TVC
for having me this
Breakfast.
morning. Yeah.
Now, the Constitution talks about the sole purpose of government being, security and practically taking care, ensuring that the security of the people is the sole purpose of government. And the police has been saddled with that responsibility of securing, the country when we talk about Nigeria. But so far, there has been several issues surrounding the police. And now the government has put in place measures to perhaps reposition the police. And we had the police trust fund law that had been assented to earlier this year. But some believe that that would actually reposition the police when we talk about issues of funding. But so far, so good. I don't know how you see how that has impacted the police or repositioned the police.
Let's begin from the police reform bill that was more or less initiated by the 8th Assembly. This is the 9th Assembly,
yes,
and it has not become an act. The reason for that is to overhaul the police from the police force established by the colonial masters to a police form that understands or accommodates the dynamics of the current dispensation, which is a police created for Nigerians. That's one part. Now, let's also understand that even if we talk about all of the repositioning and everything that has to do with giving the police force a new identity, one of the fundamentals is for the government to first of all understand why is this reformation necessary. Because at times you could see certain brilliant initiatives copied from somewhere or something you see work for another client, but you have to tailor it to meet your needs. That
Absolutely.
means domiciling that particular initiative to serve the purpose that benefits your people. So it begins with who are the people that get employed or that become police officers? In the first place, what is the database of the people that eventually become police officers? Let me run to the UK by words of mouth. You do not become a police officer if they do not even know you in your community. That's to begin with. But in Nigeria, you have us employed people who are to protect lives and property. And somebody who has lived all his life in Lagos gets posted to Maiduguri. He doesn't understand the terrain. He doesn't speak the language. He doesn't even understand the cultural values of the people. Yet is deployed to protect the people whose trust and confidence it perhaps doesn't have the street sense to gain. Now, these are very germane issues. For instance, you took somebody from Borno to go to the creeks of Bayelsa to become a police officer, and the person cannot even swim a kilometer. These are the realities. Then what about the police, the ideal? The last recruitment they did, it was announced that, all right, there is a need. I appreciate the fact that the president said, okay, there's need for us to shore up the numbers.
10,000.
Now, I saw a lot of people who came for that. These are people who do not have jobs. You don't employ people to become police officers, for God's sake, if they don't have jobs. You employ them because you found out that these people have the capacity and passion to fight crimes and become those who are responsible. It's supposed to be the ideal. But because we do not have that, and let's also not forget that the men are more than the officers.
But the way we are at this point, what can we do to totally reform the police?
I think one of the steps taken that is possible would have to be this particular the retreats being held. And of course,
We've had several retreats.
But this one particularly is for senior officers. Okay. I think there should be a 5-day retreat that actually has segments where every man, or every man as it were, I should say, of the Nigeria Police has the opportunity of being trained or spoken to. This is one thing that many of us do not understand. Oftentimes when we create such opportunities, we create it for people who are leading. But you have to create rooms for the people who are following to be able to understand that this job you've taken. And that's why when you get employed in certain multinational organizations, the first thing you are taking through would have to be some 2-3 weeks, at times a month, of training to understand the culture, the ethics of that organization. Don't forget that some years ago, a particular broadcasting house did a report that revealed the states of a police college in Nigeria, where people who are to fight crimes actually stay during their training. You can imagine the revelation actually had this backlash, but I was expecting the police then to have actually eaten the humble pie to know that this is not proper for us, so that they can work towards addressing that issue. But rather we saw backlash, some people were suspended. And even at the moment, certain things making the wave about a certain investigative reporter who put something out. His life is threatened. The security operatives are looking for him. I think that we have to get serious. What is on TV about the president and, of course, the IG talking about Muhammadu Buhari coming to do these things are positive. But what about issues that affect you, that people have helped you brought to the fore? What are the things you want to do with it? These are the realities. So if at all we want to move away from where we are to where we should be, it has to be, first of all, be sincere. Do not just say the words. Live by the words you've said, so that when steps are taken, for instance, a journalist occupies the fourth estate of the realm.
Sure.
Occupying that position means that the ruling elites and those who are with them are checked and certain help get provided to address issues. So if somebody, took the pain, took the time, spent some money, risked his life to do something that reveals the unsavory happenings within the force, I think it's important first for even the IG to have actually made a statement that, hello, we saw this, we appreciate this effort, we'll take such and such up to address it.
All right.
I talked about the reform bill, for instance. It should have been an act already, because there are lots of things stated that would have actually made the IG provide a yearly report on implementing certain things that have been set aside that it should do, at least going through the office of the Attorney General of the Federation and the report getting to the President. These are critical issues that should be addressed. Look at.
Right. When you look at the security situation in the country, would repositioning the police, and what are we looking at when we even talk about repositioning the police? Is that what will really address these issues of insecurity in the country?
Well, I think that it has to begin somehow, somewhere. And the authorities have decided to take the routes from where it is at the moment, which I think we can only, just be patient and observe how this goes ahead. But one thing that is instructive is that if the house itself is not in order, you'd have repeated challenges. Now, the last leadership, talking about Ibrahim Idris, had a lot of misunderstanding with what? With the Police Service Commission.
And that has begun to raise its head again.
Oh, of course. I'm even coming to that, and you took that out of me, and I'm very happy you said that. Now, the leadership of Ibrahim Idris had a lot of issues, such that there were accusations. It was summoned by the 8th Assembly. They talked about promotions where people paid for. They talked about a lot of things that didn't go down well, especially at that level. And some of the promotions were actually queried because, according to the rule books that I had my time to chew upon, the Police Service Commission has the responsibility to oversee the promotion of every other officer, except, of course, the IG, who oftentimes, according to the rule books, gets appointed by the president. Absolutely. Now, coming to this, the leadership of Muhammadu Buhari is beginning to have another issue. One of the challenges is that those that received some vehicles from the last leadership should return those vehicles. And it's also associated with the challenges that we discussed earlier, which has to do with some officers, maybe some people who should have gone still in service, some people getting certain promotions. So if you're talking about really dealing with issues that affect the police force, you have to look at intra-agency or intra-police problems or challenges. If the rule book says these are the things you should do, and they find out that certain things are being done contrary to what the Police Act actually recommends, then I think there's a challenge there. Now, I talked about the police reform bill, which has not become an act. I want to say very well here that if that could receive the assent of the president, which it is waiting for anyway, I think it's a way to go, because there are certain specifications that you'd expect the respective authorities within the police to adhere to. And that will actually lead the conversation into making people know that if you did this, you definitely get dealt with.
Because this police reform bill has been an issue that has been before the Senate, the 8th
Assembly, yeah.
8th Assembly, and now before the 9th.
Yeah.
And if we really believe that that is the way to go, doesn't mean that all of this that we are doing, we are just paying lip service to the issues of repositioning.
Well, I have to say that we can't hold on until that becomes an act for us to actually take any step. But I think that one thing, because they always watch us anytime we come on this platform, if you actually say things that they don't feel comfortable with, then that's when they come for you. I have to say here very clearly that as they are listening or watching us this morning, they should give consideration to the proper training of the men of the police force, the people that are the foot soldiers of the police, the people who interact with Nigerians day in, day out, are those who are in need of it. Now, let me say this again. It is common knowledge that you find police officers at game centers with their uniforms. You find police officers at where people take alcoholic beverages during service with their uniforms. I think there are very stringent measures that must be put in place, and there are also punitive measures to deter people that should be highly respected. Now, they can have their nice time, but not when you have the uniform on. So I think that these are the basics.
Proper training and reorientation.
Absolutely. So these are real issues that they should deal with. And I think doing that, it will make things work.
Talk about repositioning the police force. So one of the issues that always come up is the issue of human rights abuses. Now, how do we address this? Because in this retreat, what we are looking at is effective policing in the 21st century, but this issue doesn't seem to be part of that.
Well, I think that it's a very instructive position that you have led by giving me that poser. It therefore means that they have to take cognizance of that. Between January and 9, I should say, we've had about 6 extrajudicial killings. Some of them maybe in the course of initiating an arrest, some of them unwarranted. And I always tell people who care to listen, you can't tell me about some unknown discharge because you're trained to carry ammunition. So if you're trained to carry ammunition, it presupposes being properly trained and very careful when it comes to the use of that particular device that you have in your hands. So it then means again that we have to begin to examine the psychological state of those who handle this ammunition. Only recently we learned that they would have to be working 8-hour, 2-time shift. That at times the long hours spent at their shift, maybe up to 10, 11 hours or thereabouts, actually affects them, which is a fact of the matter. Now, apart from that, I should say again, is to ensure that there is training and retraining of men. Even in many government offices, you find out that any time they organize trainings, oftentimes they organize these trainings for senior officers or senior management staff. But they forget that the foot soldiers are the ones who create an impression that actually are used, or the kind of impression with which the organization itself is defined. It therefore means we have to do a review of the training and the retraining of people. Don't forget there's a pension fund that is effective now.
Yes.
So if we have a pension fund that is effective, or maybe a police pension fund that is effective, as it were.
Okay.
They said it's aimed at training, it's aimed at developing capacity. Then who is going to account for the funds? Knowing that the police itself has a history, I should say very evidently so, of financial impropriety. The former, the pension fund administrator, talking about Michael Kiro, I should say, said a lot of things, revealed a lot of things regarding the funds that belong to the police, particularly the pension fund of the police, where certain persons withdrew as much as over 3 billion. But when this person was taken to court, the amount with which they secured his bail was less than even 10 million. So I'm saying here that we cannot pay lip service. Now we're talking about security. One of the fundamentals, the first 2-3 pages of the Constitution, is that the government has the responsibility to protect lives and property.
Okay.
It means, yes.
Talking about protecting lives and properties now and fighting crimes, in what way can police and community harness the relationship such that that can be fought effectively?
In the first place, is for the police to always admit where it goes wrong. Let me tell you one thing. Sincerity in apologizing when certain things go wrong will go a long way in healing people who may really initially have wanted some kind of avenging for the perhaps loved ones that they don't have anymore with them.
But some say that would be a tall dream, and with the
it can be a tall dream. Let's say this as it is. There is nothing that makes governance what it is if at all somebody does something wrong, even as an institution of state, and you acknowledge it. And understanding the peculiarities of who we are as a people. Apologies are very important even from institution. Because if you don't come to people as being sincere, if you make mistakes, then it's a problem. All right, let's look at this. We're talking about police. Oftentimes when we talk about this, we look at uniformed police officers. The SSS, the DSS, the EFCC, they have their legs and arms also with the police, even if they don't have any uniforms on.
All right.
And so these are critical issues that they must really address so that Nigerians can work with them
and
for
have
the
confidence
It's very important
on the security agencies. Adeni Ikonu,
important.
thank you for your time on TVC
Thank you very much.